Once again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those joining us from Israel and the Middle East. My name is Gidon Hersher, and I serve as the Vice President for Development at the University of Haifa. I myself am joining you today from Paris, where my daughter and I have been stranded, quote unquote, since the airport in Israel has been closed and the war has begun. We are amongst the lucky stranded as we are staying with dear friends. Now that the skies have opened up, we're patiently waiting for our turn to go home, along with approximately 100,000 Israelis that are also waiting to go home. On behalf of the University of Haifa and our partners at American Friends of the University of Haifa, we thank you for joining us for this emergency briefing. The events of this past weekend have marked a significant escalation in the Middle East, to say the least. As coordinated U.S. and Israeli military action against Iran intensifies, developments are unfolding rapidly and raising urgent questions about the regional landscape, the risk of wider escalation, and what may come next. There are new and existential questions that surface daily. I'm assuming that many of you are joining us today because of those questions, amongst other reasons. There are political debates for, against, excitement, disappointment, confusion. All of these are surging in uncertainty about what this all means for the future of the Middle East, for the future of Israel, for Iran, for the Abraham Accords, for the U.S. and its relations with the world. And while we will not be able to dig into all of these questions today, we plan to touch upon as much as we can. Today is an opportunity for us to take a moment together, perhaps even take a breath, learn more about the situation from a hands-on academic perspective from a leading expert. We recognize that at this hour, you could all be doing many other things. You could have chosen to be with us, but you have chosen to be with us. You've chosen to listen, you've chosen to learn, you've chosen to participate, and I want to thank you for that. In Haifa and across Israel, the developments of the past 6 days are not abstract geopolitical headlines. There are so much more. The country is currently facing threats on multiple fronts, including renewed tensions along Israel's northern border with Hezbollah and Lebanon. For communities in the north, which have been so hard hit, reservists have been mobilized, and among them are hundreds of University of Haifa students. And this reality is felt particularly directly as the entire country navigates the uncertainty of the moment. And at the same time, many of our students have been called up to reserve duty, stepping away from classrooms and laboratories to serve their country. And across Israel, more than 110,000 who only days ago were sitting in lectures, they were conducting research, they were preparing for exams, and they were planning for their futures. And now they find themselves in the midst of yet another war that our country has experienced over the past several years. The university is responding immediately to support them. We've expanded 24-hour counseling and trauma services, implemented academic accommodations for students called into service, and we've also established emergency financial assistance for those whose studies and livelihoods have been traumatically disrupted. Our goal is simple and essential, that when students have no choice but to step away to serve their country, their education does not disappear with them. Moments like these remind us how closely academic life and national realities intersect. If the university's mission and the resilience of its students resonate with you, we invite you to learn more and support our work. And you can do that by going to www.afuh.org, and I'll be giving that in the chat as well. Today's program is part of the university's broader effort to bring serious academic expertise and know-how to moments of crisis. The University of Haifa has long been a leading academic center for the study of Middle Eastern politics, Iranian policy, and regional security dynamics. Our scholars examine the political, ideological, and military forces shaping the region through rigorous research and long-term historical analysis, expertise that is especially valuable during moments of uncertainty like these. We are therefore grateful to be joined today by one of the university's leading experts on the region. One moment, please. Professor Amatzia Baram is Professor Emeritus of Middle East History at the University of Haifa and Director of the Center for Iraq Studies. Over several decades, he has been one of the foremost scholars of Iraqi and Iranian political history, regional power structures, and radical Islamic movements. His work has examined how regimes in the region think about power, legitimacy, and survival. Insights that are particularly relevant as we try to understand the strategic choices Iran may be making at this very moment. Today's format has two sections. The first will be a dialogue between myself and Professor Baram, and the second will focus on questions that come from you, our supporters. Those questions can be typed into the chat. Professor Baram, I want to thank you for being with us today, especially given where you are located in Haifa, Israel. We're going to launch into a conversation with a broader question about how we should understand this moment. And here's the question. By the way, again, thank you. I do recognize that this is not an easy moment for anyone in Israel and for also those that are joining. The first question I want to surface is the following. What explains Iran's strategic posture in the face of coordinated U.S. and Israeli military action? And how does regime survival shape its response?
Thank you, Gideon. I would say I'll start from the end. For the regime, survival, mere survival is victory. We have to understand it. Not just because it is a religious regime and quite fanatical. It's because they have this inbuilt, very, very delicate sense of honor. And if they manage to survive, just to float, after a war against the leading regional superpower, which is Israel, and the leading world superpower, which is much more impressive, America, this is a badge of honor. This is a feather in their cap. No matter what the destruction and misery in Iran as a result. In first phase, the misery will not be theirs. They'll manage because they have all the resources in their hands, and they represent no more than 10 to 15%, or maybe 20% of the population. So the other 80% are expendable. You have to understand it. But survival is victory. So the way they look at it now is very simple. We have to survive. The regime, the Islamic revolution in Iran must survive. No one should be allowed to take over. If anybody takes over, we are dead anyway. And these guys don't want to go to heaven. This is nonsense. I had so many analysts saying this kind of, I would say it's idiotic. They don't want to die. They will go to heaven, they believe, one day, but there is no rush. So they know that if they lose power, they lose their lives. And maybe their families too, maybe not, but they will. The fact that President Trump promised them amnesty if they give up, if they join the revolutionary and so on, doesn't hold water the way they see it. So this is it, survival. And the question is how to do it, how to wear off, how to erode the American, the Israeli resolve and the power and so on. So eventually we survive even if we are half dead, but not dead. We don't want to die.
Understood. Thank you for that. We're going to elaborate on that in a moment, but I want to get in a few kind of seminal illustrating questions, and let's see where the conversation goes naturally between us. I want to bring in Hezbollah into the conversation. As we all know on the call, Hezbollah has joined the action, as it were. And the question is, how do Hezbollah's actions and statements reflect Lebanon's strategic dilemma in this conflict? And what might that mean for escalation along Israel's northern border? We've heard rumors of possible evacuation, etc. So if you can relate to both Hezbollah's kind of thinking here as well as its potential ramifications on the northern border of Israel.
Okay, so I'll start with Israel and go to Hezbollah. One thing which is not very clear to non-Israelis, and even to some Israelis, but to most it is clear, certainly to the government and to the opposition. In that respect, there is no meaningful difference. Israel is done with containment. This is something which many people outside of Israel do not understand. Whether it was a military, it was the Prime Minister Netanyahu, the government, they were trying to appease Hamas and Hezbollah as well. They didn't pay money to Hezbollah as they allowed money to go into Gaza. That didn't, well, the Iranians were paying directly. They didn't need our mediation to provide financial support for Hezbollah. Qatar did need our mediation. We, I mean, the government, but I don't know. The army didn't fight tooth and nail to prevent it. They warned against it, but nobody resigned because of that. So it was more or less general that, well, you actually have to pay them ransom. It was ransom. It was clearly a ransom, but the belief, certainly in the government, was that this ransom will work. It works, that it works. I would call it containment in a more neutral fashion, but it was a ransom. And Israel is done with it. Israel did not respond to anything Hezbollah did once the government, Netanyahu's government, took over by the beginning of 2023. There was no attempt at all to prevent Hezbollah from going crazy. And Hezbollah went progressively more crazy. And Israel did nothing. There was fear. And I'm telling you, fear of Hezbollah. And let's not move, so maybe they'll be kind to us. This was madness, total madness, like towards Hamas, whatever we did. This is over. So containment is over. This explains our attack now in last June and now in Iran. This explains what we are doing now in southern Lebanon. Basically, what we are doing there is now two things. We are telling everybody who lives between the Litani River, which is about 30 kilometers north of our border. Everybody every civilian and every Lebanese soldier, and of course Hezbollah operative, to leave the area or they risk their lives. And now people are leaving. This is in order to make sure nobody can shoot again, at least direct aim to our settlements, kibbutzim, Metula, cities, and so on, Kiryat Shmone. That's number one. Number two, we are trying to erode as far as we can Hezbollah's power. Their missiles, their rockets, their storages, their positions north of the Litani, certainly south of the Litani, but all the way to the Syrian-Lebanese border, all the way throughout Lebanon. And the reason is we are trying to make it possible. I don't know if it works, if it will work, but that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to make it possible for the Lebanese government and parliament and president, who are with us on that, to disarm Hezbollah. Now, right now, they cannot. They can do a few things which they don't do yet, and we are mistaken not demanding of them to do it. You should be demanding of them to do it. They're not yet doing it on the political and the media and public level, but not military. That we don't ask them to do right now. But we are trying to erode Hezbollah sufficiently so the government, the military, the national army will be able to impose on them the decision, which already is there by the government and president, that they should disarm. The Iranians are telling them don't. We are telling them do. So right now, enough government, the Lebanese army is powerless to do it right now. But if we erode them sufficiently, that will be the solution. Right now, we are only at the beginning. It will take a few weeks. I don't see anything else, but no more containment. That's the main.
Yeah, I have to tell you that insight right there is, I don't think, is something that is fully understood by most of the public's understanding, and I don't think that it's making the news to the extent that we would want it to. That is a fascinating insight. Thank you for sharing it with us. Let's continue the tour of the Middle East. We started with Iran. We just moved to Hezbollah, Lebanon, and now I'd like to move to Yemen and ask you a question about the Houthis. More specifically, Professor Baram, regarding the capabilities and perhaps more importantly, the incentives that the Houthis may have in participating in this confrontation, and how do you believe that their involvement could shape the trajectory of this conflict?
First of all, about the Houthis. We have to understand that the Houthis are a very special client. They are Shiites, belonging to a minority Shiite group, if you wish. But they are different from the Shiites that rule that the majority of Iranians and the majority of Iraqis, and the 30% or 35% of the Lebanese. They are different. The majority Shiites are Twelvers. They believe in 12 Imams. The Houthis are Fivers. They believe in 5 Imams. The first ones are identical, and the fifth is different from the others. Why is it important? Because they are not such natural allies of Iran. They are allies, yes, but not so natural like the Lebanese Shiites who are Twelvers, the Iraqi Shiites who are Twelvers. Furthermore, for many generations, the Twelvers looked and still are looking askance at the Fivers. A student I had, a wonderful girl, a wonderful student, fantastic brain, once told me that she feels that the Fivers are, and the Seveners too, are not quite right in the mind, in their heads, because they cannot count to 12. They believe in 5, I believe in 12, and these guys cannot count to 12. She said it with very slight disdain. Why is this important? Because the Fivers, the Houthis who are in North Yemen, they feel that the Twelvers look down at them, have been looking down at them for generations. They have to prove that they are no less resolute, no less committed than the Twelvers. And that explains why when Hezbollah no longer fought Israel, even though the war in Gaza continued, they continued to fight Israel on their own. Iran was not fighting Israel any longer. The Hezbollah were no longer fighting Israel, but the Houthis were. So I am very surprised. Now you understand why I'm so surprised.
Yes.
Expected them a day or 2 or 3 to start sending their usual presents to Tel Aviv. Well, they haven't done it so far. So what do I think? I don't know. I cannot explain it. No, I can try and explain, but I'm still surprised. The 2 ways they can bother us seriously is if they do what the Iranians are doing now. They are sending a few missiles every day, the Iranians. But this keeps the whole of Israel in the safe rooms.
Yes, it does.
It does. So it disrupts our economy and the life of the Israelis, of the state of Israel. The Houthis can do it more easily because they are, 2,000 kilometers away, further, 500 kilometers further than the Iranians. So they can do it more or less safely, and they did it. They lost many people, but they could still do it. So that's not one way, missiles or drones, whatever. They also can, and they might, try to infiltrate Jordan, and they can do it, and attack us from the Jordanian-Israeli border, from the Bekaa, the Jordan Valley. These are the two things I can think of. I don't know what
Understood.
more. I would still say that why are they not doing it now? At least the missiles and drones, which they did before. I would say that what the Americans did in about 2 weeks of war against them, we couldn't do, because the Americans had a navy in the Red Sea and pounded them really, really hard. And all of a sudden, they realized that fighting America is not like fighting Israel, because the amount of fire you can, the distance and all that. So they reached an agreement with President Trump, which we resented, but listen, we can't tell President Trump what is American interest. So, okay, whatever. But we were a bit disturbed, because there was a mutual agreement that they no longer attack the Americans, and the Americans won't attack them, but they could attack Israel, and they did. So now they did reach this agreement with Trump. They see how resolute Trump is when it comes to Iran. And they're saying to themselves, maybe it's not such a good idea to make this guy angry again. But I'm still not completely certain, not at all, that they will not do something against Israel, because they never committed themselves not to do anything Israel, only against America. So they shoot American ships, they can fire missiles to Tel Aviv and Eilat.
Professor, I'd like to go off script for a moment. I know that we kind of had some predetermined questions between us, but I'm being inundated with a ton of really interesting questions from those on the line with us, and I'd like to deviate from the script. So here we go. One of the questions relates to other international actors. Okay, we started taking toward the Middle East. Now I want to go towards Russia and China. And the question that we received is, what role might major international actors like Russia and China play in shaping how this conflict develops or potentially de-escalates?
First of all, we have to understand. So now you are expanding, you are rising higher, and you want me to look really at the world scene. This is a world. This is global.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Very good. I would say this. From an Israeli point of view, we didn't go to war in Iran because of Russia or China. It's for sure. I don't think that Trump did too, but from an American point of view, a regime change, and I would say it very clearly, the American intent is to reach a regime change without sending ground troops. If it doesn't work, Trump, I believe, will agree to less, will accept less, in order not to draw the war for too long. And I would say it makes sense from his point of view, from American, certainly. But Trump, at least from the point of view of the American interest, there is something which people call axis. I don't think it's really an axis, but it's some kind of a conglomerate. China, Russia, Iran, Cuba, North Korea, but maybe more. This is not an axis in the real sense, like the German-Italian axis in World War II, not at all. But it is a conglomerate, something like a block, if you wish to call it. If a regime change is possible in Tehran, will happen, this is a major, major blow to this, let's call it conglomerate, to this alliance, very, very, very loose alliance. They understand it. So Russia cannot help Iran at all, and is not. They wanted ground-to-air missiles. The Russians, the top notch. The Russians couldn't do it. In fact, they helped Russia in Ukraine with drones, many drones, hundreds and hundreds of drones. So Russia feels now at a disadvantage because it can no longer rely on the Iranian drones, even though it always introduced some changes and improvements, never mind. But the basic drone was given to them, sold to them by the Iranians. So the Russians are not going to intervene in any meaningful way to help Iran. China, yes. China, yes. China sold the Iranians raiders, ground-to-air missiles. China is doing a lot in terms of intelligence, helping Iran. Just recently, they published a map with all the American bases, very accurate, in the Middle East. So I would say it's public. It's not secret.
Yeah, sure.
So I think China, for them, if this regime falls, this is a major, major blow to China. I'll explain why. From one point, more than one, it's the Belt and Road and so on. But I will go only for really economic ramifications. China is buying right now about 85% of all the Iranian oil on the market. Of course, it's smuggled this way and the other, but it works. It is buying it at a very heavy discount. It varies. I would say, I don't know, between 5% sometimes and 35%. For China, for the huge amount of energy it needs, this is like a gift from heaven. Of course, the Iranians are complaining all the time, but the Chinese are very happy all the time. So if Iran no longer is under embargo, a new regime, a new system, and so on, or an agreement with Trump over nukes, which will exclude other things, but that means opening the market to the Iranian oil and gas. If that happens, China it can still buy, but it will have to pay the market price. You cannot imagine how important it is for the Chinese economy, which is now in trouble. Not disaster, but trouble, in difficulties. So I would say, from an American point of view, neutralizing this bloc, China, Russia, Cuba, whatever, this is a major global strategic goal. So that's why the administration is definitely interested in regime change. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you just brought in economics to the conversation. I'm going to bring us back to politics just for a moment. And I think a question that's on many people's mind relates to the potential for regime change and what that actually would look like. And that naturally, brings up a question regarding the supreme leader's succession and whether the leadership will be stabilized, or we can expect a succession plan, including the possible rise of Mojtaba Khomeini. So the question is, what might such a possibility mean for the regime and its regional strategy if Khomeini's son, Mojtaba, were to succeed him?
We don't know yet if Khomeini's son will succeed him. This goes against the revolution's principles and so on. That's number one. Number two, Mojtaba, Khomeini's son, the late supreme leader's son, is not really a prestigious religious scholar. Anything but it. He is Hujjatul Islam. Hujjatul Islam is the lowest rank of all three. There are three ranks: Hujjatul Islam, Ayatollah, and Ayatollah Uzma, which is Grand Ayatollah. Of course, Khomeini was a Grand Ayatollah, of course. Mujtaba, he's at the lowest rank, and he has very few publications. I looked up his publications. I'm not impressed. And people are saying it in the committee, 88 religious scholars who are the committee that is supposed to elect the new supreme leader. Many are saying, how can this man be our supreme leader? He's a baby. He's only 56. He's a baby. And his publications, come on. Maybe he can get, I don't know, an MA in our esteemed scholarly system. No, but Mujtaba Khomeini is indeed very close to the Revolutionary Guards, the Pasdaran, very close to them. That's true. He's their man, really. He's their choice. And for them, for the Revolutionary Guards, who are really ruling now Iran, nobody is ruling Iran now but the Revolutionary Guards. There is a triumvirate of the president and two other actually very impressive religious scholars, but not a lot of political experience. They are now officially running the state. But that's not the case. The ones who really are ruling it behind the scenes are the Revolutionary Guards. For them, having Mujtaba Khomeini is wonderful. And why? Because he has no prestige. He'll be a puppet. I had 3 or 4 other scholars, religious scholars, ulama, mujtahidun, that would be a problem for the Revolutionary Guards because they have huge prestige, and like Khomeini, they can really rule. But they don't want a religious scholar, an ayatollah, to rule them. They'll make him an ayatollah, that's no problem. But they want everybody to know that they are manipulating it. So it's very good for them.
Yeah.
What it means is not so good if the regime survives, because he himself is radical. He is more radical than he's dead. He's more radical than he's dead, and that's saying a lot, Gideon.
Yes, I understand.
He's more radical than he's dead. I said a lot, didn't I? Moreover, you see the way the Revolutionary Guard, the Pasdaran, are thinking now. You already see it. They are attacking everybody around them. Look, I can understand why they attack Saudi Arabia. I don't understand, but I can see it can make some sense. Iran attacked Saudi Arabia before. But why are they attacking Qatar? Qatar is a friend, or Qatar, as you call it in America.
Yeah.
Not you. America.
Yeah.
Qatar. Qatar is their friend. They are their friend. They are theirs. Why are they doing this? Also, not the American base there, but civilian targets. Why are they attacking Oman? Now, Oman, I visited Oman. I was there. On an Israeli passport, by the way. So Israelis cannot go to Oman, but I did for a certain reason. But the point is that Oman is really trying every way to stop the war, to avoid the war, to prevent the war. They failed, but they are trying now. Until they were attacked, they were trying to end the war and to reach that. They are very gifted. They are wonderful negotiators, wonderful, the best maybe in the world. They are negotiating in order to prevent crisis, to prevent war, to prevent destruction and instability. Stability is their, and I admire that, is their slogan. That's what they see, and they need it themselves. But it's also a matter of commitment. All of a sudden, the Revolutionary Guard is attacking Qatar. Why? What are you doing? Now, why are you attacking Azerbaijan? What's the point? Azerbaijan is on good terms with Israel. That's true. But Azerbaijan is on excellent terms with you. What are you trying to do? They are not ambivalent about you. They work with you and they work with Israel, and they're trying to create some kind of a modus vivendi in which no one fights on their soil anybody. That's it. Why are you doing it? Many things, but I cannot tell you what they are doing. So had it been for Khomeini or for Khomeini before him, Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the Republic, of the Islamic Republic, Had it been for them, they would have said to the Republican guards, to the Revolutionary Guards, don't do it. We forbid you to do it. And the Revolutionary Guards would have to accommodate, to accept.
Understood.
But now that Khamenei is dead, and there is no supreme leader, Rahbar is supreme leader, they do anything like, and they are the ones who do it. So they are trying to create such a crisis that everybody will cry mama and force the US to stop the war, force and impose a ceasefire on America. But nobody can do that, and nobody will do it, and they get everybody angry and disappointed and disillusioned. Maybe people thought, not maybe, people thought around the Gulf, the Arab Persian Gulf, that they can get along with the Iranians. That, yes, they did. But all of a sudden they show that they are crazy. And this is very problematic. So I would say, I think it's a mistake. I don't know. But my view is, had I been their advisor, I would say to them, don't do it. Look, also, if you fire so many missiles on Saudi Arabia, on Kuwait is not your enemy, on Qatar, on Oman, if you do that, you have less missiles to fire on Israel. So what are you doing? And Amatzia can sit at his study and talk to Gideon, and there is nothing is happening. This is not good.
Yeah.
That's all I say. So right now, we don't know who is going to be elected, but quite likely Mujtaba Khamenei. Yes, I agree. It's quite possible.
Possible. Yeah. I want to surface what might seem like a very kind of simple question, and perhaps some of our supporters who are on the line have an answer, but I'm going to pause. I'm going to propose this question to you regardless, which is, in your assessment, what is it that Israel actually wants at the end of this conflict? Can you paint a picture? What does it look like? And if I can add one additional layer to the question, what are the plausible ways that the conflict could end? What would the outcome mean for Iran? And what would it mean for Israel? But I purposely am stating a very kind of broad and seemingly simplistic question, which is, what exactly does Israel want in your assessment? And I know that you're not a prophet, by the way, but you are a Professor Emeritus, and you have a lot of wisdom within you that we are interested in hearing. So please.
From the Israeli point of view, in the same way that we want Hezbollah to disarm and become a political party, like anybody else in Lebanon, we would like Iran. In Lebanon, we don't need a regime change. Lebanese government and parliament and president are thinking the same as we do now about Hezbollah. Iran, it's a different case. Israel wants a regime change. Now, I know this is since the Iraqi war, it became a dirty word in America. I'm fully aware of it. So the question is, what is Israel's preference? Absolutely preference is a regime change. We would like the liberals, the youth, the anti-clerical, anti-regime, clerical, and the Islamic regime, young generation to take over. And we believe that they have enough education and understanding what a democracy is. Their democracy will be better than what you have in Iraq. And in Iraq, you no longer have a dictatorship. That's true. But it's not really a democracy. In Iran, it will be much better if there is a real regime change, because we know exactly what happened in the early 1950s when there were free elections and it was a democracy. And the West, in its silly thinking, destroyed it without trying to find the modus vivendi, some kind of arrangement. Because of oil, nationalization, and so on, the Mossadegh regime. It was democratic. The Iranians know what democracy is. They know it. In 1908 until 1911, there was a major disruption of economic and social life, a revolution. because they managed to force the Shah of those days to accept some democratic principles. So Iran is not Iraq, Iran is not whatever. So, yes, and then we believe that they'll be friendly to us. We are pretty sure that will be. So that's wonderful. But will it happen? I can tell you what I think, but if it doesn't happen, Israel has priorities. Priority number one, without any question, is no nukes at all, no enrichment at all. And here we are, I think, in sync completely with the Trump administration. No enrichment, zero enrichment on Iranian soil. They can participate in something with Saudi soil, research and so on, but that's number one. Number two, no missiles. Again, if the missiles are 75 kilometers, who cares? But missiles for 2,000 kilometers, thank you very much. Because if the Iranians have a few, like 10,000, 15,000 missiles that can reach Israel, and each missile, as some of them right now have, about 1.5 tons of TNT. When a missile like that falls, we shoot out of the skies, most of them. But 5% or 7% is enough to destroy Tel Aviv, let alone Haifa. Because you cannot imagine, I couldn't until I saw it, what a warhead that has about 1 ton of TNT can do when it hits the ground. You have 1 ton, the warhead, TNT, of course, which is a lot. Saddam Hussein had about 250 kilograms. So it's 4 times Saddam Hussein's missiles.
Yes.
When it comes from space, it has a kinetic energy of 2 tons of TNT. So you have 3 tons of TNT falling, it destroy a whole street and sometimes 2 streets. This is formidable. So the Iranians, yes, it's not existential. Iranian nuclear weapons are existential threat to Israel, no doubt. But even just 10,000 missiles of that kind or other kinds are a huge risk.
Sure.
We'll insist that America makes sure, we should try to make sure that these missiles are limited in range and in payload. Point is, these are the top priorities. Top priority number 3 is no proxy organizations. Well, that's very, of course. But here is,
we're both smiling, aren't we, Professor?
Of course. But Gideon, imagine that the Iranians have no missiles that reach Israel, no nukes, and that they lost the war, because if they'll agree to it, then even this regime will be seen as having lost the war. For them to resuscitate everything that we managed to destroy in Lebanon, in Iraq, we didn't touch very much. In the Houthis, we didn't do very much, but the Americans did. So it will be very, very difficult, and we'll have to deal with it. What can we do? We'll have to match it somehow. But I would say this is priority number 3. Priority number 4 is still important, but we can't do that, and we can't guarantee that, is human rights. Human rights. Stop killing your own people. But that's also what Trump wants to do, or what the Americans would like to do. The point is that there's a limit to what you can do in a country which is 2,000 kilometers away from you. And you cannot help them. You can help them, as we do now, to help themselves. But that's where I agree with the Israeli position now 100%. We shall try to help you to help yourself, but eventually you'll have to help yourselves. So that's the kind of thing. I'll just say one more sentence. I am shocked, and I really am shocked, how the liberal and super liberal communities in Europe and in America are not supporting the Iranian people now, and castigating the Iranian regime for killing at least 20,000 unarmed civilians, children, women, whatever. At least 20,000, maybe more. And no one is protesting it. The only ones who protest it are Iranian exiles.
Yes.
In America, Britain, Germany, and so on. But the local liberals and super duper liberals are not joining them. Why? because I believe they are really in love with extreme Islam. One more thing. One more target or aim or goal, both of the Americans and of the Israelis. Nobody talks about it, but this is definitely, in my analysis, a very important target, is to show that radical Islam is not only vile and vicious, but also defeatable.
Yeah.
This is very important. It will help a lot against Al-Qaeda, against ISIS, Daesh. It will help even against Turkey, because Turkey is prompting radical Islam. It will help against brothers in Egypt. It will help against many, practically all. Even though, and I'll end by saying that the Iranian Islamic Revolution is Shia.
Yeah.
The radicals, the Islamist radicals in Turkey, like Erdogan, and the Muslim Brothers and ISIS and Al-Qaeda are Sunnis. But in terms of radical religious attitude and program, there's no difference.
Understood. There was one comment you made that I feel we could zoom in on it and do an entire workshop in terms of how liberal left, progressive left is and is not reacting to the situation, is and is not supporting the people of Iran. I just want to thank you for bringing that to the conversation, and perhaps we can encourage a second conversation together. I'm going to bring one final question, Professor, to our conversation, and then we'll close up as we're approaching the hour. And it really relates to casting our eyes forward into the coming days, weeks, and perhaps months. And given your experience, your research, your study, and your understanding of the region, what indicators should analysts and policymakers watch for in the coming days or weeks that might signal a significant shift in the trajectory of the conflict? What should we be looking out for?
Number one, if all of a sudden the president, Pezeshkian, he's an elected president. Don't forget it. And the supreme leader, Khamenei, the late supreme leader, manipulated the system in order that he would be elected about a year and a half ago. He didn't want a radical president. He wanted a pragmatic. He's not moderate, but he's a pragmatist. He's pragmatic. He wanted a pragmatic president. His whole government, his foreign minister and so on, are pragmatists. He chose them. He handpicked them. And Khamenei, the late supreme leader, Rahbar, made sure that he will be the president. He would be the president, and he is. He or one of his people, his foreign minister, his deputy foreign minister, his ambassador to Ankara, I don't know, will come up with some, all of a sudden, moderate suggestions. Then you see that the whole system starts to give. For example, if somebody will say, from the regime, with authority, but it won't be the Revolutionary Guards, the Pasdaran, for sure. But somebody from the more pragmatic side will say, hey, wait a minute, we are ready for no enrichment whatsoever. Let's talk about it. That will be the first sign. That's on the diplomatic, political level. On the ground, I would say it's both a danger and a sign of disintegration. If the Kurds will manage to take over parts of the Kurdish Iranian part, the Kurds and is the Baluch on the north. That's on the north. If the Baluch on the southeast will take some parts, a few cities in Baluchistan, which is southeast. Why am I saying? But this could be good, but it also could be very bad. It would be good if they declare upfront and clearly, we are not going to split Iran. We would like to have a united Iran, but we want some autonomy, this and that. But we are not trying to explode Iran. Minorities and so on, 50% almost are minorities. not speaking Persian as mother tongue, and they're not Persian, even though they can speak Persian, but they're not Persian, not seeing themselves. I don't expect, for example, the Azeris to do it. The Azeris are very loyal to the regime, and they're about 15% of the population. But the Kurds, maybe, and the Baluch, maybe, and the Arabs on the Iraqi border, on the border with Iraq too. So I would say, but they have to be very careful and not to go mad, because if they say our intention is to split Iran asunder, to explode Iran, and to have Kurdish independence in Iran, that will be lethal to the popular movement against the regime. And I would like to see the people in Tehran and coming out, but they cannot do it right now because they will be mowed down like cattle. So
yeah, sure.
if my son wants to do it, I'll chain him to the bed. I won't let him go out. But if and when Israel and America and Israel, not Israel, no, America and Israel, will manage to wither, to erode the Revolutionary Guard and the other internal security organizations enough for they can do it. And if there is organization which hopefully the CIA and the Mossad prepared, I don't know, they'll come with weapons against these guys, then I would say this is the beginning of the end of the regime. But right now, I don't see it.
Professor Amatzia Baram, thank you for such an enlightening and sometimes disturbing conversation. Your insights, your experience, your wisdom, your analysis was eye-opening, and we are grateful. For those that have joined us today, we have done everything we possibly could to relate to as many questions as possible. And as you can see in the chat, there is an option of sending your questions to info@afuh.org. What we've heard today underscores the complexity and the potential consequences of this moment in the Middle East and around the globe. Understanding the strategic thinking behind these developments is essential if we are to make sense of where the region may be heading. To bring it back to the University of Haifa, scholars across multiple disciplines are deeply engaged in studying the political, social, and security dynamics shaping the region. And programs and conversations like today's briefing, it reflects the university's commitment to bringing rigorous academic expertise into public conversations like this during moments when informed perspective matters most, and it's on all of our minds. As we navigate this difficult and uncertain period, with many of our students currently serving in reserve duty, it's the support of friends and partners around the world like you that is more meaningful than ever. If you'd like to learn more about the university's work and support our students during this time, again, you can visit our website at www.afuh.org. I want to thank everyone, and of course, Professor Baram, for joining us today and for your continued engagement with the University of Haifa. This ends our conversation today, and we wish you all a safe day and a safe evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.